The light rain streaked the windshield like small cuts, and the fogged glass made it difficult to see anything other than the ghostly silhouettes of streetlights winking on the sidewalk. She had been standing in the car for too long, engine off, hands motionless on the steering wheel. Outside, the city continued, indifferent. Inside, everything was paralysis. The radio screeched to a static station, as if the entire universe had forgotten how to communicate. The house in front of him was ordinary, typical of the Portland suburbs. Tall grass, wooden porch, closed windows. But there was something there, something that time hadn't erased, like an invisible rope pulling through the ribs, the stomach, the past. She didn't know if she got out of the car out of longing, necessity, or self-punishment, but the body moved before the mind decided. And so, the shoes touched the wet sidewalk, as if repeating a forgotten tragedy. The house lights flickered as she walked down the hallway, as if the place was breathing, as if it acknowledged her presence. No furniture had changed. The photos on the shelf continued to reveal smiles that would seem fake today. And the silence between the walls seemed to carry memories like suspended dust. Just move the air, and everything comes back. It was there, in that same house, that it all began. The intense gaze, the light touches, the promises that seemed like oaths. The connection was immediate. Chemistry, they would say. But it wasn't. Not really. It was something else. Something older, more instinctive. A kind of silent recognition between open wounds. As if two survivors met on the battlefield and mistook it for love. He also had that same hunger in his eyes. Not of desire, but of healing. But no one heals anyone in a hurry, and they were both in too much of a hurry, to feel, to forget, to fill in what was missing. The beginning was an avalanche of intensity, late-night messages, meetings that seemed like escapes from the world, confessions whispered between kisses, as if the other were a sanctuary. But shrines demand reverence, and they were breaking the windows from the inside. The signs were there. They always have been. The constant need for validation. The sudden fear when responses were delayed. The silent irritation when the other made plans without including. But they called it passion. Delivery. When in reality it was just anxiety, dressed up as romance. The touch that soothed was the same one that later hurt. Affection was followed by absence. The sweet words soon turned into silence. Over time they began to communicate by omissions. An avoided look said more than a scream. Missing hours was punishment. When one opened, the other closed. A game where both lost, but no one admitted it. They slept side by side, but they felt cold. They were together but always alert. It was like sleeping with your enemy and still wanting him to hug you. On social media they were perfect. Smiling photos, cryptic captions, hearts in the comments, likes in sequence. The performance of love was more real than love itself. And that's why it lasted so long. Because as long as everyone believed, they would also believe. Until it didn't work anymore. Until the bubble burst, and what was left was a silence that didn't need to be explained. In the present, she was slowly climbing the stairs, touching the handrail as if trying to ground herself in reality. The room still had the blue bedspread. The same one where they spent a night discussing what it was like to be too intense. He said she felt everything in an exaggerated way. She said he pretended not to feel anything. But deep down, they were both terrified. Because recognizing your own pain in others was like looking in the mirror and not knowing whether you hated or loved the reflection. They didn't love each other. At least not the way love should be. They were completed in the fractures. And this, although intense, is never healthy. It was like fitting two pieces of glass together. It looks perfect, but it cuts whoever holds it. And they both bled too much to continue. On the floor of the closet, she found a box. Inside, letters never sent. Small explosions of sincerity shelved by fear. The last one said, "Sometimes I think you only love me when I'm sad, because that's when I look like you." She read it without trembling. Because finally I understood. What they had was never chemistry. It was survival. A secret code between the wounded. Trauma recognizing trauma. In the kitchen, the light flickered. The ceiling had leaks. But the coffee was still there. The smell, the same brand, which for years was routine. Now it was just a warm memory. And that was the saddest thing. Not the end, but how everything became background noise. Love shouldn't end as white noise, but it ended as the ambient sound of a chapter that should never have been written. Outside, the night had already swallowed the street, and the chill of the wind felt more real than any touch he had received in years. She went back to the car. There were no tears. There was no relief. Just a kind of organized void. A type of pain that no longer screams, just observes. Through the window, the house seemed smaller now, as if it had shrunk with time, as if he also wanted to forget. And maybe that's what love becomes when it's born from trauma, a house built on ruins. It may seem stable for a while, but all it takes is one tremor, and everything comes crashing down. As she drove back through the sleeping city, she thought about the people who still mistake intensity for connection, in couples who feed on jealousy, absence, games, in unanswered messages like weapons, in feelings bottled up as trump cards, and how many are hurting themselves just to prove that they can still feel something. The road ahead was dark, but steady, and for once, she wasn't looking for a light in the rearview mirror, because now I knew. What seemed like chemistry was just family pain, and family pain is not love. It's just an echo of a past that no one had the courage to heal. When he got home, he deleted all the photos, not out of anger, but out of respect. Respect for yourself, for everything you allowed, for everything you learned, for everything you survived. And before going to sleep, he wrote in his cell phone's notepad, "It wasn't love. It was just someone hurt, trying to feel whole with another hurt person. And that's never enough." After that, he slept. For the first time, at peace, because in the end, what seemed like destiny was just a wound recognizing a wound. And truly loving begins when we choose not to bleed together, but to heal alone. If you've also confused trauma with love, maybe it's time to rewrite your own story. Like, comment, share. Someone you love may need to read this today.